I thank the gentleman. The Chair now recognizes Mr. Gowdy for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Frederick, how are you?
Dandy.
If my information is correct, your company was able to come back from the brink. Can you tell us how you accomplished that, whether government was helpful or not helpful? Tell us about your odyssey back.
Well, the government was helpful in putting us to the brink, but not helpful in getting us out. And I dispute this whole financial regulation issue about why the financial sector crashed. I mean, it was bad loans that were made, which ultimately triggered this whole thing. And that's what caused a problem for us in 2009. We were running 2 days a week, 3 days a week. Our salaried people found out what it was like to get paid for 2 days a week and not their full salary. But it was just sheer the ability to cut back our internal cost, and we did it on the backs of everybody, including myself. I still haven't raised my draw back to where it was in 2008 because I can't afford it. So everybody felt the pain, but it was all labor. It was, and really, when you want to cut something in a hurry, that is what you have to cut. There's no way around that. And what you cannot cut is what we're talking about here today, which is burden, regulatory burden. That's a fixed cost. It is so fixed that you can't even identify it to cut it. So we did it through guts. Everybody had and we didn't lose any people. You know, the economy was so bad that, you know, we didn't have people leave and go somewhere else. There was nowhere to go. So fortunately, we kept our core group together.
Well, thank you, and we commend you. Mr. Timmons, I come from a state, South Carolina, that while we have a lot of manufacturing jobs, we have lost a lot of manufacturing jobs, and particularly in the upstate of South Carolina. Can you give me some specific examples of particularly pernicious regulations that are impacting the manufacturing sector? I know about tax, I know about the litigation. Help me with the regulatory side. What can we change to help create manufacturing jobs or keep the ones we have in the upstate of South Carolina?
Well, I think the most important thing we can do at this juncture is to ensure that additional regulations that are costly do not get imposed on manufacturers, because as I've stated earlier, and you've just mentioned as well, the overall cost of doing business in the United States is 18% more expensive than it is among our major trading partners and developed economies. That cost does not include the cost of labor, because we believe that a higher standard of living is desirable. It does include, however, in addition to energy cost and tort cost, it does include regulatory costs as well. I welcome the President's executive order because it asks all agencies to look at the regulatory burden overall and evaluate each regulation's impact, existing regulations' impact on jobs and the economy. I think that study will help us determine exactly where changes can be made. When I was in State government, one of the things that we chose to do was to evaluate literally each and every regulation. It was the State of Virginia, and we were constantly competing against the State of South Carolina to see who could be the most competitive. And we chose to look at every regulation on the books, and 75% of our regulations over this 3-year period were either amended or eliminated so as to make the economic environment more conducive in Virginia for investment. So I think the first step is this executive order, and we'll see what that produces. I've indicated several regulations that we have concerns with in my written testimony. I'd be happy to provide another copy of that, but it is a rather lengthy list, and we can also get you some specific costs.
Only got 30 seconds. Let me ask you more questions. My constituents are in one accord that regulations are stifling their ability to create jobs. They're about equally divided on whether or not those are unintended consequences or whether it's part of a broader scheme to get through regulatory mechanisms which you cannot get through legislative mechanisms. What's your judgment on that? Are these unintended consequences, or is this getting through regulation which you can't get in elections?
There are many regulations on the books that have come about through the regulatory process and not through congressional action, that is for sure. The Environmental Protection Agency is talking about they have a proposal to regulate greenhouse gases. That clearly did not make it through the legislative process, and it would be an example of legislating through regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.